Good morning, the Northern Rivers, and just waiting for Asher Rubin to join me to explore his second creation festival here called Bloom, and in particular to unpack a little of the training that I'm going to be running there, which is called The Warrior and the Sorceress, Anger and Fear. Well, using anger and fear to navigate the unknown. I went to the first festival, which is Emergence, over New Year's, just this last last New Year's gone, and I ran a workshop there called Sacred Rage, particularly working with this rage that so many of us carry around, and really unpacking what it means to work with embodied anger. So and here we are. So yeah, that was the Emergence Festival, and now we're transitioning into the next round of we've emerged and now we're blooming. So here's Ash. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hey guys, hey Karina. Thanks for doing this with me. Sorry, Stacia, Karina. Good start to the interview, right?
Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Asha. I'm the director of Bloom Festival. I'm also a business coach in the embodiment and personal development space for coaches and facilitators. Bloom Festival is like an epic 4-day adventure of like deep embodiment workshops and a lot of fun ecstatic dance experiences. It's a drug and alcohol free event. So we know everyone there is going to be really deeply present. And I have the pleasure of having Stacia come and run her beautiful workshop with us. So you and I, we're going to have a chat about your workshop. We're going to unpack why it is magical and special and important. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Bloom Festival. So before we dive in, I want to set this up. For those of you who don't know, Stacia is an embodied feelings guide, an anger coach, and a holistic counselor. And she's going to be running a workshop called The Warrior and the Sorceress, Anger and Fear as Allies in the Unknown. And Stacia, I really like your description of your workshop. So I'm actually going to read it out so people can get a taste of it.
Right. I'm just going to grab my phone charger while you do that.
Sure. Cool. So Stacia's workshop, she's written, allow me to introduce you to the warrior and the sorceress, aka your anger and your fear. Life is wild and unknown. Attuning to these landscapes requires you to have a healthy relationship with fear. Traversing them with strength, clarity, and perseverance requires an acute relationship with anger. When archetypal anger and fear are activated and embodied, you've got a warrior and a sorceress on your team. This is what real safety feels like. It's an inside job. The warrior and the sorceress have always been there out on the edge, patiently waiting for you to open the door and invite them in. Enticing. I like it. So let's dive right into talking about your workshop. Stacia, like what is the warrior and the sorceress? Why is it important? And what are people going to receive from this workshop?
So the warrior and the sorceress are, in my experience, how anger and fear show up when we've got them online, embodied at a cellular level, and functioning for us in our lives. And so many people have the experience of our core feelings as being really scary. Like there's bad feelings like anger, sadness, and fear. We need to get rid of them, and we need to just strive for joy and peace and love. And in my experience, the more we push those aside, the more we're moving away from joy and peace and love rather than towards it, because they're these natural inherent parts of being human and being alive. Like anger is fire and passion and clarity and purpose and direction, and this is like, these are the qualities of like the peaceful warrior. The warrior can fight for sure, and we need to have the capacity to really defend and set boundaries if someone's trying to invade our space, and we can use anger for that. But most of the time in our day-to-day life, we need it to speak up and be clear and have this sort of clarity online that we can use this way, like to really be on purpose, but also like to send out to the edge of our energetic field and create a stronger structure, which is why I talk about safety with anger. It really creates this strong holding capacity that we can then really unpack some of that stuff that's more vulnerable internally. And then fear, as the sorceress and the magician, sort of, they dance so well together, these two core feelings. Like fear is at our heightened level is this, but if we really can just tone that down to like this really mild, like vibrational attunement, awareness, presence, like it, I've got goosebumps just talking about it. Like it's our goosebumps fear in a way. It's how can we stay alert and attuned and have fear running through our nervous system. That's the, you know, the resonant tissue in the body where fear works the best, to really bring us in to our bodies and the nervous system, because it travels through the whole body. Having fear running through that at a lower functional level where we become used to it, where we can become friends with it and allies. And it's this capacity to, you know, the indigenous folk talk about being able to sense the weather or Uncle Bob's coming, and it's just it's a sensory thing, but also we can sense danger, which again is why I talk about safety, because when we're attuned to what's going on around us internally and externally, and we can sense into danger coming, it also means that it's constantly steering us towards safety if we're listening.
Yeah, beautiful. I definitely recognize how fear and anger are parts of the human experience that are very discouraged in mainstream society, and in the absence of anger, we can lose touch with our boundaries and our clarity. And in the shutting off of fear, we can shut off our sensitivity and our acute awareness. So this seems really potent. I'm curious, in your observation, like what do you notice happening within yourself or within others? What are some of the symptoms that show up when people are disconnected from their anger and their fear in day-to-day life? So if I was watching this and I was like, maybe I'll do this workshop, maybe I'm disconnected from my anger and my fear, how would that person know that they are disconnected from those emotions?
Well, for me, when those two are working together, well, when they're not working together, there's a lot of inaction, indecisiveness. Like, I'm not quite sure. People pleasing is a really big one. Saying yes instead of no, saying no instead of yes a lot of the time. Not feeling like we're looping in our heads. So trying to find the answers up here. It's like this, like fear often when it's not in flow pulls us up. And if we don't have anger online as well to create a safe enough space, then that it can also happen. And then we're trying to find answers up here for often quite big problems or big things that we want to work with. Being quite stagnant. I'm noticing that I've gone a little frozen at the moment, which is my own fear. So I'm just going to pause and move it through my body.
Beautiful. I'm checking in with myself around what's happening in my body as well.
Yeah, what I love about that, and what I just noticed in that moment, was I'd done exactly what I was talking about. It's like, oh, I've got to come up with the right answers, and I went up here, and because I'm still learning all of this as well, right? And just that moment of like, send fear into my nervous system, allow it to move in my body, allow a little movement in the body, and just bring me back in. It's like the incarnation game. It's like how fear moving through the body can really bring us in to this space. So yeah, here I am back here.
Welcome back.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to pause right now. I'm not sure
Okay.
what's going on, but yeah.
Cool. I think there can be a lot of excitement around showing up live on a video, and a lot of emotion can emerge around that, and it's
Yeah.
really cool witnessing you process that in real time and then language your experience. Like, this is
Mm.
what we're learning, how to occupy our physical and emotional bodies, and drive the car of our nervous systems and find the gear shift and the windscreen wipers, and it's potent. It's potent tools. Like, it helps us discover how to be mm, more present and more powerful in the lives that we live. So it's good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, there's something that feels slightly edgier to talk about in the context of how, what shows up when we're not in contact with this stuff. And there's things like a lot of blaming other, or blaming the environment, or blaming external, like, which is sort of this, it has this anger energy in it. So if there's also resentment, like having resentments about what happened or what somebody else did, and having a lot of anger energy going out, which is often what happens when we're not sure how to move it through, like hold that intensity of that energy in our own systems, and like really come in to the clarity and presence of, actually, what do I want, and what do I stand for, and what did I need to speak up in that moment that I didn't feel safe enough in myself to speak up, or that I didn't have clarity about within myself. And the more I continue to do anger work and anger practice, the more clarity and certainty and sort of courage to speak the little unknown, to speak the things that feel unspeakable, the things that we often hold in and think, I really need to sort this out and get clear on this first before I come into contact with this person, or before I enter that space, rather than being able to be in our body, be present with what's there, and just speak the clarity that is there, which is, I don't know what the fuck's happening right now, or I'm really scared, or I've just gone blank, or whatever it is, to be able to bring that forward with the clarity of that unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm hearing is that, what I'm taking from what you're saying is that um, when we are untrained with our anger and our fear, we can respond to anger and fear by closing our hearts and trying to
Yeah.
control our environment and trying to influence other people without, or retreat, or basically fight or flight. We go into fight or flight, and we're
Yeah.
not necessarily acting from our wisdom. And that when we
Exactly. And
train,
yeah, go.
when we train with anger and we train with fear, they become invitations into deeper presence, and we can harness and utilize and channel these energies very powerfully. They can actually become amazing allies.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with anger is that it's the feeling that we need to be able to set clear boundaries. But when we're not trained and versed and resourced with how to work with our own feelings, we can set internal boundaries most of the time quite unconsciously. So fear comes up and we say no. And we're using, whenever you say no, you're using anger and bringing that sort of the sword in, but we're cutting ourselves off rather than how we often can cut others off. Right? and we can use anger as a sword to cut off, and we can use it as a sword to penetrate. We can use it to bring ourselves into the world or block ourselves out from it, and we can do that internally so much. So when we start to work with anger, that the lid that we've been using anger to keep on the other stuff that we don't want to feel, the vulnerabilities that we don't want to show, what the things we don't want to be seen in, that starts to loosen, because we start to move that energy and we start to be able to feel all this other stuff as well. So it's also about titrating, like how we, slowly introducing ourselves to this energy of anger and fear, and also sadness and joy. I work with 4 core feelings, but I'm focusing on these 2 this time around because it's good to zone in on them. And the other thing I want to just throw in is that when we've spent years not being educated about working with feelings, what we tend to learn to do is to like put a lid on it and push them down, because we get told, and we're shown so many examples of why it's not okay to be angry, or it's too wussy, or whatever it is, to be afraid, too whingy and attention seeking to be sad. Sometimes it's not okay to be too joyous because it's disruptive. And so we push it down, and so many of us are walking around with these big, particularly with anger, volcanic eruptions in there that either come out seethingly sideways in passive aggression or explode volcanically, or with fear, we just shut down and withdraw. And that's this emotional energy that we're carrying around with us. So often anger comes in the moment as a feeling that's really functional, and it has a message to serve right now, but because we don't know how to use it and work with it, it gets pushed down and it gets tapped into that big well of anger that we've been carrying around for ages. And then something comes up and it feels really big and really important, and we're all explosive and we think we need to make life's biggest decision because this energy is so big it must be important, when actually it's decades of stuff we haven't dealt with. So there's, what I'm also training here is like working with the feeling, the functional feelings, rather than the backlog of emotions, and like the distinction between feeling and emotion. Being able to really work with that life force energy that are our core feelings, that is just running through us all the time, and we can listen to that at a really subtle level rather than just get to know anger at that bigger explosive level.
I'm curious about what the real world transformations are in people's lives when they clear out the backlog of anger and fear and use those tools with precision and intentionality. How do people's lives change?
I've had so much feedback from people around different experiences that they've had post trainings. Particularly, I've had a lot of mothers come saying that their relationship with their kids has changed because their just embodied presence of anger and fear has meant they've been more alert to what's actually going on, and their no has been felt rather than them having to say no, 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 and it not landing anywhere. We can say no really quietly, and it emits from our whole body in a way that makes a much bigger impact than just trying to make the voice louder and strain the throat kind of thing. Had a woman who was a dog trainer come to a training, and she just said it transformed the work that she did, not just with the people but also with the animals, around just again being able to sense in and communicate through the embodied experience, which is what Bloom's all about, right? Like the coming in to our body and being able to relate from an embodied place rather than just from the head. I had a couple that weren't able to conceive, that had that conceived like the weekend after an anger training. That's probably not what people might be coming for, but it was just quite an amazing. They were much more in their bodies. Mainly, it's about human relating, though, like and subtle differences around being able to be more relaxed, more open, more spacious, and more receptive to our own intuitive wisdom that comes when we can be in a more down-regulated place in our own bodies, and mm, and to feel safe being in our body. Yeah. I've also
Well,
had
Jade,
quite a few people come quite nervously into reclaiming anger who had chronic fatigue syndrome or just a sense of apathy and depression, recognizing that there was something about anger that they needed to work with, and had a few people message me saying that they needed a sleep to get through the day, or they needed to have a little lay down and a nap every day to get through the day, and just didn't need that after activating anger in their system in particular, and being able to relax in working with fear rather than, when fear comes, becoming more afraid. Actually being able to feel fear coming and relax into it, and use anger to hold a safe space to tune into what's the message that I'm being offered right now through my capacity as a human being to feel. Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Mm.
I have a few things to add. Firstly, hi Jade, good to see you. We did an interview with Jade yesterday, which was
Yeah, I saw
beautiful.
that. Mm.
Secondly, I'm noticing when you brought yourself down earlier in the interview, I was not consciously aware of this, but I was quite excited and less present than I could have been in that moment. And when you
Mm.
came down, I attuned to you and I also came down and I feel much more at ease in my own body now. So thank you for that
Mm.
transmission. Um, and I feel it's really perfect to have a workshop on harnessing the power of anger and fear and these feelings, and because I mean I love that this is happening in the festival in Bloom, because like this is a training ground and there's going to be a lot of adventures and opportunities available to people in the workshops that are available, in the interactions that we have. There might be some really inspiring people there who someone might want to meet, or a beautiful person who they want to flirt with or initiate something romantic or sexual. Um, and the more attuned we can be to ourselves and our truths and our listening to our yeses and our nos, the more we can be really discerning and intentional about how we open up into these experiences and really honor our boundaries and our needs and our desires. And we
Mm.
can become really precise about how we want to be. So yeah, feels good to have your energy and your contribution as part of this whole experience.
Mm. Yeah, thanks. And, hopefully it's going to be fun for people as well, because often, we think about working with feelings and it's like, oh, feelings, yeah, I've been dealing with those my whole life. I'm not sure what to do with them. But yeah, like working with magic and the sorceress and the archetype of the warrior to me it's fun. Like there's so much more that we're capable of in these bodies when we can let
Yeah,
this energy run through them. And yeah, I want to have fun with that, play with that.
I think this is a point worth highlighting, that a lot of us have done a lot of catharsis and emotional release work,
Yeah.
and you ran your anger workshop at Emergence, and the feedback that I got from people was that the way that you're approaching these emotions is much more nuanced than the typical emotional release experience.
Mm. Mm.
And there's the word that comes to mind is precision. Like there's so much clarity in the way that you help, and the titration of like how much and how little, like, and it's in those subtleties that we get a really clear sense of our own internal dials on our nervous system. I think a lot of
Yeah.
the the emotional release work is like 0 to 100 and like big, intense, massive expressions, but
Yeah.
and you can experience a release, but then it's very difficult to integrate that and make that a part of your normal way of being.
Mm.
Whereas I see in the work that you do from the feedback I've received that like that it's like a more intelligent way. It's a more intelligent way of being with these emotions. It's more nuanced, it's more mature, and that means that it's accessible in day-to-day life. It really like lands for people.
Yeah. Yeah, and the distinction that really makes a difference with how I work with feelings is one at a time. Like so often I've been in spaces, as you said, where there's this really genuine invitation for catharsis and big expression, but it's all coming through together. Like fear and sadness and anger and even joy we've been holding in. Like it's all trying to come through together. And it doesn't, in my experience, it doesn't work. But working with anger and recognizing, oh, yeah, we're working with anger now, and the pitch in your voice has gone a little high, and it's an indication that fear's there. So notice fear, but really intentionally come back to working with anger and bring it through your bones. And then we'll work with fear in your nervous system, and then we'll work with sadness in all the soft tissues. Um, and it makes a difference, really makes a difference to slowly, like, just go a little bit, see how it feels, go a little bit further, even just like, yeah, like I just dialed up my anger 5 or 10% right now, and it brings a little bit more presence in my eyes. It brings little bit more clarity into the space, and then I can just drop it down again and bring a little more in. Just like, how does it feel, and what do you notice, and what happens to your fear when you bring anger in, and how can you use your anger to work with fear, and really distinguishing between them and building the relationship between each of these core feelings so that we can notice, oh, that's anger and that's fear and that's sadness. And rather than, oh, I've just got a bunch of stuff in here and I don't know what it is, and therefore I don't know what to do with it. And when I try and bring it through, I feel more traumatized and exhausted rather than energized and relaxed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you for
Mm.
highlighting, painting the picture on that. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. And, we've got 2 hours of Bloom, so we're not going to be doing like, we're going to be delving deep into the dungeons, but we're going to have a play with, what does it feel like when anger's present? What does it feel like to even associate with the word warrior and sorceress, as opposed to like persecutor and rescuer on the victim triangle? These are the archetypes that are sort of more dysfunctional, anger and fear. But when we step onto the new map, we lean into the warrior and to the sorceress,
That's cool.
and we can shift in. Yeah, I work with this triangle in a bunch of different ways, and sadness is the lover,
What
even though it's got a workshop about that.
why
Sadness is
why
the
do you
lover.
use the word sorceress? I feel like I don't fully get that link.
Magician, sorceress, wizard, this kind of, it's just one word that I've picked that I like, but you could go with magician, you could go with wizard, but it's the magical qualities. It's the capacity to see beyond what we can currently see through our sensory capacities, rather than just what we see and what we make it mean. That makes
So
sense.
is fear like a dial-up of our sensory capacities? Is that
Yeah, fear is
right?
fear is our sensory receptivity, attunement, this this vibrational quality that at a when it's at a functional level in our system. Like right now, I really tuned into my fear before I stepped into this workshop, to this talk with you. It's like, I feel fear right now because I don't know what's going to happen. And fear naturally comes when we step into the unknown, which is, to me, is just life. Every step we take, we can never really know, even though we've got a plan. And so there's always a little fear online that's like keeping us attuned and present to this particular moment right now. And so often we can get distracted with the past and what happened last week and trying to remember something to bring it here, or what's going to happen in the future. And our fear can take us to those places rather than keep us in this moment. That when
I
fear
love
gets
that
really
fear
heightened.
as the activation of our sensing capacities in the space of the unknown.
Yeah. And I really see it working in the peripheral nervous system, particularly that where we're receptive, where the information comes in up the central nervous system, we get the message, and then comes back down, we take action, and anger is part of the action taking. And so there's this receptivity. When a lion's coming, if we're in Africa and the lion that's starving's coming bolting towards us, if we don't feel fear, we're just going to sit there and watch it and have a laugh. But if we need fear to go, oh, then danger's coming, and then we need anger to take the action, and fear provides these signals and brings this creativity. Like, fear is so often in those situations, I've heard stories where people have gotten, the mother that's lifted the car up when she didn't think she could do that, or someone's got up, climbed a tree when they've never been able to be that agile. Like, fear just provides these creative possibilities all of the time.
Cool.
To steer us away from danger and towards aliveness, towards life. Much faster than our logical minds can. If we sat and tried to sort of calculate what the best place is to go, we'd be dead, So fear really has this capacity to be the signal that anger takes the action on.
Yeah, I love it. And to bring it down into the practical, like the way that we relate to these emotions has impacts on every part of our lives. And to come into a 4-day space where you're going deep on the core of how we relate to experience, and reflect in that deep core space of feeling and the abstract, those shifts there can have ripples out into career, into relationships, all the parts of life where we feel stuck. We can actually discover new tools and new approaches and new attitudes to meet those things. So it feels just very practical and useful to spend a few days every now and then to step out of the doing and reflect on how we're being on that deeper level. It's very resourceful. It's like pouring deep resources into us that we can then take out into our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, it's like a little switchel or a reset or a reprogramming, shedding an old skin and coming into contact with other human beings in a way that we're not used to. Willingness to take a little risk or a big risk, whatever it might be, to step into a cauldron and see what else is possible. Like, something else is always possible.
Yeah.
Up to us to take the first step towards that. So yeah, I'm excited to step into the cauldron with a couple of 100 curious creatures and see what happens.
Yeah, me too. If you if for the people who are thinking about coming to this festival and people who are thinking about coming to Bloom, what's your message for them?
My message is to not think too much about it and drop into your body and experience what you notice when you consider coming to a festival. And there's some part of me that doesn't even want to call it a festival, but come to a festival or gathering place of people who are curious about creating new culture together. Like, what happens in your body when you do that, and trust that, and listen to that. And maybe there's some fear, but it doesn't mean that doesn't need to mean no. It might just mean that there's excitement. In my feelings world, excitement is a combination of joy and fear is about curiosity as well. So I invite the curiosity to propel you into having a different experience and creating new possibilities together.
Thank you, Stacia. Are there any last pieces that you want to share before we finish up?
No, there's nothing that's obviously there. I'm just grateful for your courage to say yes, firstly to emergence and now to let that bloom, and for showing up in the way that you do, in a really grounded way. I can feel it.
Thank you. It definitely has called on my courage, for sure. Yeah, thank you. I received that. If you're considering going, talking to you, the viewer, if you're seeing this and you're thinking about going, Stacia has a coupon code with a little discount. You
I
can send
do.
her a private message and she'll give you that code. I would love to see you there. You can come and chat with us. You can come and chat with Stacia. If you have questions about the festival, if your fear is activating some curiosity and there's some things you need to look after in order to attend, I invite you to email us, info@theembodiedmovement.com, and let us look after you. Let us take care of you. We've built a really beautiful, robust experience where all the little details are being taken care of. So, and the website also has lots of information. So go check it out, see if it's aligned for you, and if it is, come join us. I would truly love to see you there. Yeah.
Yeah, come
That's
and
it
play.
from me. Yeah, come and play, come and play. And it's also going to be loads of fun. Like we're going to be dancing, we're going to be laughing. It's right on the edge of nature. There's a creek running through. We're going to have feasts at night. It's going to be a really joyful
Yeah.
experience.
There's a lot of space to have time to yourself as well if you want to wander off, and there's a lot of possibility to come back in and connect and be together. Yeah. All right.
Okay, that feels complete for me. Thanks, Stacia. I'll see you at the
Thanks,
festival.
Ash. See you there.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, friends.